I also sat down with Catherine Turcer, the executive director of Common Cause Ohio, which is part of the coalition that's working to put the Citizens Not Politicians redistricting amendment before voters. Foreign contributions are already illegal. That's been stated several times. An Ohio Elections Commission opinion in 2021 says the law that bans foreign contributions to candidates extends to ballot issue campaigns as well. Everyone seems to agree that foreign money in elections is bad. So why not just go ahead and articulate it into state law? Former Secretary of State Ken Blackwell calls it constructive redundancy. Why not just do that?
No one is out there saying, oh, I definitely want foreign money in Ohio elections. No one wants that. In fact, there are clear prohibitions in law. There's a prohibition from the Ohio Elections Commission. We all understand that we're not supposed to do that. And there's really nothing wrong with putting a prohibition directly in Ohio law. The problem is that the Ohio House coupled it, with an enforcement mechanism that is problematic and could easily become politicized.
Now, polls have shown, and we keep hearing about this, that people say they don't want foreign interference in elections, whether it involves former President Trump or anybody else. Is there the danger that those who oppose this are going to be viewed as, hey, you support foreign money and foreign interference in elections?
I think people might be confused by that, but I hope that I have been very clear that what we're worried about is abuse of power, that we're concerned that all sorts of nonprofits might be investigated. We're concerned about, opening the door to an abuse of power, and this is especially problematic because if we actually had greater transparency, if we could in fact follow the money, then you wouldn't need a deep dive and a deep investigation. So a better approach would have been to actually create greater transparency so that all of us could actually follow the money. This, reduces corruption, allows us to consider, the source of information, and then leave the investigation and the referral to the prosecutor to the Ohio Elections Commission, which has Republicans, Democrats, and independent.
Let's talk a little bit about that enforcement mechanism here. The bill would move enforcement authority over to the Attorney General's office. So the argument has been that they've got the teeth to make this happen, that the Ohio Elections Commission is essentially a paper tiger and can take a long time to take action if it ever even happens, whereas the Attorney General has more power to go ahead and do these things. Why not give that power to that office?
So I would not disagree with the sponsor. At the end of the day, the Ohio Elections Commission is a bit toothless. Now, what we could do is we could give the Ohio Elections Commission a better budget. We could give them subpoena power. There's no real reason to actually involve the Attorney General in this.
But the Attorney General would have the power to make it happen arguably more quickly than some of these other entities would. And then there's also the question about county prosecutors and whether they have the bandwidth to do this kind of stuff.
So one of the things that we could be thinking about when we're thinking about bandwidth is actually ensuring that there's the resources to do this. I think that's really what that comes down to. Now, you don't need really robust resources if you actually have greater transparency in the first place. When we have a better ability to follow the money, meaning all voters, then we can identify early on, hey, something looks a little hinky here. And then hand it over to an investigator to do a little bit more research. But if we have a system that is very closed, very dark, we can't exactly figure out what's going on, then you do need either the Attorney General or the FBI to actually do an investigation. So, you know how crowdsourcing works? In many ways, we get at a problem, we're able to identify some solutions, think about Wikipedia, but we also need professionals to seal the deal at the end of the day. And so why not create greater transparency so that we can actually understand what's happening, shine a light on dark money, and then we actually have the Ohio Elections Commission that can do an investigation and hand it over to a prosecutor. It would be so much simpler. But then they would actually have to address dark money in all elections. And so far, even though it's been 4 years since Householder was arrested, I'm talking about former Speaker of the House, who also had a name that works for this, householder, since his arrest. And really, we all became very, very aware of the House Bill 6 scheme. So...
Well, let's talk a little bit about the dark money issues, because you have, for a very long time, talked about your concerns about dark money, all sources of dark money, and more transparency throughout the whole political process. But there's no effort actively to address dark money, and the argument could be that it's because there's no incentive to do it. Democrats and Republicans both use dark money and both benefit from the use of dark money.
So what is true is the longer we operate in a dark money system, the more it just becomes what we do. And what we do know is that, dark money, secret money fosters corruption. Let's face it, no secret is necessarily problematic. But if you create a space where nobody actually knows what's going on, sometimes it's pretty hard to be well behaved. And so, when I think about the importance of really shining a light, allowing us to follow the money, we can consider the source of a contribution. Like when they do a political ad, we can say, oh, well, they're saying that because they want this specific thing. Imagine how different it would have been if those Generation Now ads had said First Energy, paid for by First Energy.
The dark money in the 1630 Fund, which is this progressive group that donated to help pass Issue 1 last fall, or at least promoted passing Issue 1 last fall, the Abortion Access Amendment. They also, that's where the Swiss billionaire is part of this, and some of the things that Republicans have talked about. They also donated to a campaign in 2018 to pass a constitutional amendment that would have changed criminal justice and drug-related sentencing and that sort of thing. That one didn't pass. And so, isn't this really up to Ohio voters that really, does dark money or money from any other source really have an impact on what voters decide? Isn't it really up to them?
So everything really does come down to the voters, but we do know that money plays an outsized role. And that's because, of all the political ads, they can shape the conversation, they can shape how we think about things. They can send us in one direction and not asking appropriate questions. And so when you think about kind of where we get our news now, I'd like to think that everyone is tuning in to watch this program right now, but a lot of people are getting their information, just on social media. And so if they're really targeted social media ads, sometimes people don't leave that kind of rabbit hole to go and get more information about candidates. Sometimes they don't go to the candidates' websites even. And certainly they're not getting as much information as they used to when, the press was more robust.
What do you think is going to be the final effect of this? Because there's been the question about whether it just will foster fear and confusion and make people not want to get involved in ballot campaigns and be complicated for elections officials who are getting ready for a huge presidential election along with all the other things. What do you think the final effect of this is going to be?
So I'm not really clear what the final effect will be. I do think that there could be some folks that will be overly worried about, well, did these donations come from somebody who is married to somebody who has a green card and the money came out of their account? And, does this mean it's foreign money because that person made more than the person who actually made the donation? Like, what I worry about is it stirs a lot of fear. And, we're talking about the importance of direct democracy. It's hard to imagine, many folks overseas that are very concerned about redistricting in Ohio. But, what I think could happen is people will be more concerned. And then because we don't have greater transparency, this all may much to do about nothing. Because if you can't actually follow the money easily in the first place, maybe this will have no impact whatsoever.
The foreign money ban passed with an emergency clause attached, meaning it takes effect immediately after it's signed by DeWine.